partner compensation, and what do we mean by that? In the context of the presentation for today, and I just want to be sure this is clear for everyone, because we do find that firms sometimes use different terminology, but we are talking about every single dollar that goes into partner pockets. So it's not just what some firms call like the allocation of the profits after the salary. It includes that salary piece. We're talking about like all the dollars, and also to the extent that your firm may offer sort of really high-end perks, you know, that like a manager wouldn't even come close to getting. Like if you run partner cars through your firm, that type of thing would also be included in it as well, especially to the extent that maybe one partner is getting it or doing it and one partner is not. Healthcare, 401k, any of these other things. So you may call it a draw, a base, a bonus, all of that stuff. That's what we're talking about today as a whole. And so we're talking about ways that you can use the division of those amounts as a whole to help drive partner performance. Now let's talk about agony, right? I gave a promise that we would cover this topic in the title. So the challenge we see many firms facing as it relates to partner compensation is that there are roadblocks to having a successful system to allocate income, to allocate compensation among the partners. Some of those roadblocks we're seeing is a lack of communication is really common, right? So many partners in a multi-partner firm, especially when you're beyond founders, right? If it's two founders, this usually isn't a big deal, but when you're beyond that, a lot of newer partners, incoming partners, less senior partners feel like, I don't understand, how to influence my compensation. Some of them feel, and I think if they would step back, there might be a way they could think about this differently, but some of them really feel like they have no idea what they might make in a given year. And that can feel sort of uncomfortable, especially for someone who feels like, gosh, I'm a partner. I have no idea how much I'm going to make. Again, I think they probably could make some reasonable guesses, but it's that feeling of uncertainty that causes some of this agony piece within multi-partner firms. Also, a lack of understanding, so partners not understanding how their firm's compensation system works. Who decides it? What decides it? Is it a formula? Is it a committee? And in some cases, I've seen firms where they have a formula, which you might think is nice and clear. But the formulas, as some of you probably know, maybe painfully so, can get really complex. I worked with a firm earlier this year, $24 million in revenue. They were on a formula. Even the managing partner who she was new to the role, but her job in overseeing that system, she was still learning how it worked. And their newer partners sort of were like, seems to work okay, kind of, but we need to change a little bit. But they really didn't have a grasp on, everything that went into it and all the intricacies because it had gotten so complicated. A third agony piece that, I would say, a fair number of the firms that we work with, but not the majority, have low partner income. And the problem with that is that even if you refine how you allocate the income, it doesn't change the fact that partners on the whole really aren't making that much money. And so there's kind of just an inherent sort of less satisfying feeling than if you have a firm that's highly profitable. Now, that's not to say that the highly profitable firms, everything's roses, because I certainly know plenty of firms where the partners are making, more money than almost everyone in our country, and they're mad about how it works because they felt like they should have had $10,000 more. I'm sure you've heard similar things like that from others at your firm. So these are some of the challenges that we're finding firms are facing in terms of having a successful compensation system at their firm. So let's do this polling question now. This is the first one kind of from my set, but I'm curious, when you think about your firm, which of these three, or is it all, or is it none, is causing most of the issues in terms of partner comp at your firm? And if you have a broader response to this, I would love for you to put that in the chat box or a question in the question box if you have like a different response for what causes issues at your firm regarding compensation.
I know that we were not able to put the full answers into the poll, so I'm going to reiterate those. The answer number one is lack of communication about how to influence one's partner comp, what data is considered or anticipated ranges of income. Answer two, lack of understanding of how compensation is decided, how the system works. 3, lack of income. On average, partners at your firm make less than $250K per year. 4, all of the above. 5, none of the above. Hope that helped a little bit. Looks like most people have had a chance to answer.
And I just want to ask you a quick question. So I clicked, oh, never mind. I clicked on the poll and the screen view of myself disappeared, but now it's back. So,
okay, yeah.
And let's see, how do I see or share the results? Oh, there we go.
I'm sharing. Can you see it now?
I can see it in the little GoToWebinar window there, yeah. Okay, so this is great. Let me just kind of talk through these results real quick here. So kind of a tie for those top 2, lack of communication about how they can influence their compensation, lack of understanding how the system works. Glad to hear that only 8% are in that lack of income bucket. A quarter of you feel like, yeah, we got maybe a little challenge in all of these areas. And then a third of you, fantastic, don't have any challenge with any of the above. Now, this is where I would love, if you're on here just to kind of learn more about the topic, fantastic, glad to have you. If you're on here because you have a different challenge, something that's causing some problems with your firm in terms of partner count, would love to have you toss that into the chat or the question box so that we can kind of see what that is and see if there are ways that I can address it for you. So, okay, I think we can hide the results for that now, and I'll go back into some of my other slides here.
There is one comment here, Kristen. Says people understand how it works, but we're not sure it is properly incentivizing or holding accountable. And then another comment, how much of a partner's comp should be determined based on their ownership. In our firm, it seems that the 2 founders, while generous, still receive a large portion of their comp based on their ownership percentage share of the profit.
Okay, those are great questions. Now, I feel confident. I definitely have the ownership percentage question coming up. I've got an answer to that. That's going to come up in my slides, so we'll do that one. Can you read the first one? Can you read me that one again? So I think I talk about that later, but yeah.
This is Bart, and he says, people understand how it works, but we're not sure it is properly incentivizing or holding accountable.
Right. Okay, cool. Great. And that is a common problem as well, is that, yeah, maybe the system is really understandable, but it's not effective in terms of doing what you want it to do. And we definitely are going to be talking through that as well throughout the presentation. So let's see, where do I... Just making sure that I got a slide on that. Okay, so let me go through to my next slide. In fact, well, here's to Bart's point, right? This is what you want your system to do, right? And then we'll talk about how you can have your system do that. So some of the things that performance-related items that comp systems can help drive at your firm are the following: achieving the firm's strategic plan. Achieving those individual goals. So beyond, overall, are we going to hit our numbers, but like, what's your play within our strategic plan, specific metrics? Maybe you've got someone who, could be better at business development if they just kind of had the incentive to give it a try a little bit more. Number 3, complying with written roles and expectations. Part of me wishes that didn't have to be on this list. But I'd imagine many of you, if not today, at some point in your career, worked with a partner who was awful at entering their time or really late at getting billings out. I heard recently a story about a firm, and this was from a while back, but the managing partner used his WIP account like a savings account and would just leave massive amounts of time and billings in WIP until he was at a cash flow point where he needed some money, and then he would do some billings to clients as opposed to, say, billing on the regular. And again, as much as, for the most part, that's not a ubiquitous problem with everyone. Otherwise, your firm probably wouldn't be a business, but you probably have a partner or two or a manager or two that's kind of stuck with that, and figuring out how you can move that into your system is important. Number 4 here, adding intangible value, right? Your comp system can help drive that if you have a component in your system to reward people for these things that are just a little, like you can't push a button and get it out of your system at most CPA firms. I do know a couple that track a lot of metrics in the intangibles areas, but it's not not the most common, right? It's not like dollars collected. You can run that report and see it right away. Number 5, acting consistent with the one firm concept. If your firm is in line with this model or headed towards this model where it's not just a bunch of individuals operating under a shared name with a shared copy machine and a shared printer, you want to have a firm where you're out there in the community saying, yeah, we do tax and we do audit and I've got partners and we share staff and responsibilities. Your comp system can help incentivize people to follow along with that stuff. And then earning their compensation each year by contributing to the firm, by continuing to perform, and not by kind of resting on their laurels. So this goes to that other comment, which I think is coming up in about 2 more slides. Not just saying, well, hey, I built this thing, so now I get to sit back and collect. Now, to the extent that they built a thing and they're still collecting money on it, great. But if their performance has declined and they're not contributing as much as someone else, that can be challenging for other partners in the firm. Okay, so what do partners want? When we talk with like non-executive partners at multi-partner firms, here's what we're hearing from them of, like what would make them feel better about their system. Transparency in how that comp's going to be determined, what criteria specifically is going to be evaluated. Especially when we talk about that intangibles piece. How are you going to, if you're going to have that as a component in your system, how are you going to evaluate me? Like what information are you going to look at? And there are some different tools that firms can use for that, and I'll just touch on those real quick. Self-evaluations, peer evaluations, upward evaluations, those types of things can really help firms actually get data to implement some type of a driver behind how you make decisions on how someone performs in an intangibles type of way. Partners want to understand how they can impact their compensation. And then number 3, they want to be fairly compensated for their contributions. They generally, especially if your system is open, whereby partners know the comp of other partners, and they can do math, so they can at least back into like, well, here's what I'm not making, so it must be being made by someone else. They want to be fairly compensated for the contributions that they make. So yeah, let's talk about this ownership percentage question, because I've got a slide on that right here. So one of the outdated partner comp practices is basing a large part of compensation on ownership percentage. While that used to be, the thing, it used to be that there was a kind of a bar to become an owner, and especially in smaller firms, it's like, hey, if you're an owner, you're an owner, and we're a third, so everyone's going to get that equally. Or I'm a 50% owner, and you two people are new, and you're each 25% owners, so that's how you're going